Hello YouTube, Earl here, and I thought I would give you my thoughts on this. Oh yeah, well, not that. This. I hate it when the labels don't line up correctly. When I'm looking on the back end was straight, and this wasn't. But this is Mac Baren's Burley London blend. It is a Burley blend that has kind of a chocolate top note on it. And from what I understand about this blend is that for a very long time it was a kind of a perennial favorite of Burley lovers, and that Mac Baren stopped manufacturing this tobacco a few years back. I think they used some special Burleys that had been aged in barrels for a certain specified amount of time, and Mac Baren just felt like they didn't have, I guess, maybe the Burley supply or the right kind of Burleys to continue to manufacture it. But they have done a special one-time run of this blend again, and as of earlier today it was available on smoking pipes. I don't know if it still is, but they come in 100-gram tins, and it's a Burley blend with a chocolate top note. And I got some. I've smoked 5 or 6 bowls of it. I'm somewhere in between, and whether I like it or not, I'm not sure. I'm a Burley fan, so I'm not sure that it's this blend that I don't like. I'm just not sure I'm a big fan of straight Burleys. But so let me give you more story on this blend itself. So they've got these specially aged Burleys. They've aged them in like, I think, white oak barrels or something like that. Then they take the Burleys, they mix them with some select Virginias that have a high sugar content, and they press it, I believe, and then they cut them and then tumble it out. So you kind of got a process to kind of help marry those flavors a little bit more. And again, there's a chocolate top note on there. There's also kind of a fruity component with it too, and not unusual to tobacco. My wife would say it smells like chocolate and figs. To me, the aroma is more like something's become popular these days that I see in stores are chocolate covered pomegranates, and that's really what the aroma is reminiscent to me. Anyway, it is it's a smooth blend. It's fairly unremarkable. Okay, meaning that there's not just a ton of flavor here. It's right kind of middle of the road. Good Burley blend. If you've got bad smoking habits, I think this will cover for a lot of that. I mean, you can really press this blend and you don't get much ill effects of it. I find that I always enjoy the second half of the bowl of this blend much more than I do the first half. I'm guessing that's I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because the Burleys are able to toast a little bit further down the bowl, and so the character of it changes. I don't know if it's the Virginias that are in there. I don't know what it is. Anyway, this blend is a fine blend. I think if I don't just think, I actually did this a couple of nights ago. I had 2 first-time pipe smokers, and I introduced them to pipe smoking with this blend because of the fact I didn't worry about it giving them tongue bite. I didn't worry about it getting harsh on them or the flavor not being there. The room note is pleasant. And so from that perspective, if you want to give someone a pipe tobacco to try and don't want to introduce them to an aromatic that might give them a tongue bite, and might ultimately kind of disappoint from a flavor profile, this might be one way to do it, even though, again, you get a heavy dose of chocolate on the nose, on the tin note. You don't get that in the smoke by and large. Maybe a little bit on the retro hill if you really sip it. Can you pick some of that up? But it's a good blend. It's enjoyable. If you sip it just right, I can kind of get some tastes of a good Burley blend. There's something here that I'm tasting kind of on the retro hill for the first time. I haven't tasted it before. That's a little reminiscent of some more kind of classic aromatics that I enjoy. There's this portion of it, and I don't know how to describe it. But anyway, it's a good blend. It's a good blend. If you're a Burley lover, I gotta imagine that you would like this stuff. Now I know Mac Baren also makes another like a golden brown Burley blend, and I think they even sell it in bulk, that is described very similarly to this, although I think it's got more Virginias and the Burleys aren't aged as much and maybe a little bit less top note. So I know there's a similar tobacco out there, and if many of you smoked it in ages past, you probably already knew about that. But I bought it because I saw on Smoking Pipes a lot of you who had smoked it in the past loved it, and so I gave it a try, even though I'm not a huge fan of Burley blends. So pick you some up. The second half of this video I thought I'd turn to more my thoughts on the meaning of life. My grandmother was 99 and a half and passed away on December 24th, on Christmas Eve. Lived a long life, a full life. She was from New Orleans, Louisiana. She was an Italian, and grew up and was raised Catholic in New Orleans, Louisiana. She was Carmelita, or actually Carmelite Rita Galata, and she married a North Louisiana Southern Baptist who met while he was in medical school, and she was teaching at the medical school at the time. So she was born in 1920, and at the time, this was during World War II, and she was a little bit of a groundbreaker from that perspective, that she was teaching chemistry in the nursing school at the medical school in New Orleans. So that should just tell you a little bit about kind of her character and who she was. But they got married, and she raised 6 boys, which I can't imagine. I have 4 children. I've shared that on this channel before, from ages 10 to 3. And she had 6 boys. I've got 3 Three out of my four are boys, and boys are just men. We're difficult to raise. um, Not that girls are not, but they're just different. We're wild, chaotic, and yeah, I just don't know how she did it. But she did. She and my grandfather raised 6 boys. My grandfather was involved too, but he was also very busy with his medical practice. And so I know that she did a lot of the child rearing, and especially in those days, that was kind of what was expected, on her own. She had a lot of help as well. I mean, it takes a community. There were housekeepers and other people that were very important in my dad and his brothers' lives, and still to this day, that they are very appreciative and good friends to, and would tell you that they shaped them, maybe not as much as my grandmother, but had a great impact on them as well. So she did have help, but she raised 6 very successful boys. 5 of them went on to be doctors, and my dad was the one kind of black sheep of the family. He became a lawyer and a judge. My grandfather, like I said, he was a doctor. His dad and before him was a doctor, so my great grandfather was, and so was his father before him. And it's amazing to just kind of see that legacy and that input. But my grandmother, in order to raise those 6 boys, had to be feisty, determined, and so the story. There are lots of stories about ways in which she learned to raise those boys, or knew to raise those boys, and ways in which she did it well. And one of them is that dinner time could be a challenge, to say the least. You had 6 boys at the table. It was immaculately set because she wouldn't settle for anything less. Everybody had their spot. She would sit down at the table. Well, first let me set this up. She would put dinner on the table, and one night, as the story goes, things got a little out of hand, as it can with 6 boys. She had worked all day, or at least better part of the afternoon, fixing dinner. It was pork chops, and I'm sure it was probably cornbread and peas and carrots and all sorts of good North Louisiana food. And put dinner on the table. The boys said a quick, irreverent prayer, and all 6 forks went for the pork chops at the same time, and an argument and a scuffle broke out at the same time. To which my grandmother looked at them and said, "Boys, if you're going to act like dogs, you're going to eat like dogs." She took them and threw them in the front yard, and then took all the pork chops, threw them in the front yard, and the cornbread and the peas and the carrots. And she said, "Now, eat your dinner." So, it's funny. A lot of people, my Uncle Billy, who gave the eulogy as he was talking over this story, and this is a story I've heard many times before he told it at the funeral. But as he talked through it, he said, a lot of people would say that that's a testament to her feistiness. And he's like, it is, but to me, it's much more of a testament to her patience. That if she did it once, boy, she could have done it a million times. And what you need to know about my grandmother is I'll tell you about all the kind of feistiness and the determination that she had. She was the kindest woman I've ever met in my life, to this day. And what made her special beyond anything else was that when she talked with you and you and her would have a visit, she was completely focused on you. And she had a way of asking questions and being there and listening, and just in her attitude and her demeanor, that made you feel like you were her most favorite person in the whole world. And I think you would ask, I've got 22 cousins on my dad's side of the family, and I think if you asked any of them, were you Grammy's favorite, the answer was yes. Every one of us thought we were her favorite. And she knew how to do that, to make you feel like you were the most important and special person in the world. So more than stories about her, I have memories of just the way you felt in her presence, that she delighted in you, that she loved you. And that's an amazing thing, an amazing gift. The other thing that it kind of brings home to me is that my grandfather passed away 21 years before that, her husband. And I think back to that point in my life as an 18-year-old, I thought that she was old then, and that my grandfather was old when he had passed away. But now I know that they weren't, that, she was 78, and I think he was about the same age when he passed. And I think about my dad. My dad now is only 70. He's 71, soon be 72. Or actually, no, he's 71. 70 right now, will soon be 71. And but I think about that, and I think, well, gosh, he was had just turned 50 when my grandfather passed. And I'm going back, and I'm just thinking through, and I'm realizing at my age I'm not that far off from Dad was in a lot of ways in my memories from childhood, and how that seemed just a few years ago, and how I feel like I'm still young. And the truth of the matter is that I am young, but that life comes at you fast, and it goes by really fast. Whereas, like I said, I thought she was old at 78, but she wasn't. Still had plenty of life and memories left in her, and certainly, just a broader point of just life comes at you quick, and that you better get about living your life today, and not waiting for it to come to you, or thinking that it really starts at a certain age, that before you know it, life is gonna be over and here and past. So those are some of my thoughts on life and on my grandmother. To realize that we don't really know how much time we have left, any of us. And even if we do have a long time left, it's going to come by and go by quick. And that we better really get going and live the life that we're supposed to live now. So maybe some of that's because I'm going to turn 40 this year. And so I'm not going to have the midlife crisis where I go buy a sports car and leave my wife and kids and trying to recapture my youth and date a younger woman. But it does begin to put things in perspective. I'm not sure that I've got when I have a midlife crisis is more of a midlife panic of realizing, hey, you're close to halfway home, buddy. It's time to get about your work and to get it done and to get it accomplished. So I'd encourage you, wherever you are in your stage of life, although according to the stats, many of you are in my same age group, according to Google Analytics. But I encourage you, get busy doing what you were created to do. I've got a very specific thing in mind on that. Being the religious person that I am, I think that God has created us all for a very specific reason, to know and to enjoy Him. And I think that's your business to get about doing, is to know Him, to enjoy Him, and to tell others about that. That's me, and that's what I'm going to set about my work and the rest of my life hopefully doing. I hope to take some of the lessons of my grandmother's life and do that. And not just being feisty and determined, but to really get to know people, to listen to their story, to remember their story, to want to know them, for them to feel that I delight in them and that I love them and that they're my favorite person in the whole world. Yeah. Doing that so that they might come to know the Lord, and so that I might truly love them and delight in them. That'd be a life well lived. Guys, it's Earl. I'll leave you on that. Good night.